There's this thing that happens the moment you stop being a student. Everyone around you assumes you know what you are doing. Like overnight, like the moment you left school or finished whatever you are doing, some switch flipped and suddenly you're supposed to have a plan, a direction, a thing you are building towards. A 5 year goal, a career path, a vision board or whatever. And if you don't have any of that, nobody says it out loud. Nobody pulls you aside and says, "Hey, you seem lost," but you can feel it in the questions people ask, in the way certain conversations go quiet, in the look your parents give each other when you say you're still figuring things out. I want to talk about that because I think it's one of the most common feelings for people our age, and somehow it's also one of the most isolating one. Like everyone around you seems to be moving, and you are still standing, still wondering if something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you, but let's actually talk about why this happens, because I don't think it's as simple as just being lost. I think there's something bigger going on. So here's the thing nobody really explains to you growing up. There's this invisible timeline that exists, and you absorb it without even realizing. It comes from your parents, from school, from watching other people, from movies where the character is 24 and already has their own apartment and a job they love, and a group of friends who all hang out every weekend. And this timeline basically tells you by this age you should have this, by this age you should know this, by this age you should be here. And the problem is, you never agreed to this timeline. Nobody asked you if it made sense for your life. You just kind of absorbed it, and now you are measuring yourself against a deadline that nobody actually sets. A schedule that was never really to begin with. I remember sitting with someone, just a normal conversation, and then asked me where I see myself in 5 years. And I gave the answer, the answer I'm talking about, the one that sounds good, the one that makes people nod and smile and move on, the one that takes about 30 seconds to say and means absolutely nothing. Because the real answer, I have no idea where I'll be in 5 years. I barely know what I want from next month, and I gave this whole confident sounding response about goals and growth and direction, and the entire time I was just thinking, I have no clue, I am completely making this up. And the thing is, I don't think I'm alone in this. I think most people are doing exactly that, giving away the answer. Because saying I don't know feels like failure. Saying I'm still figuring it out feels like an admission of something, like you fell behind somehow. But behind who? Behind what? There is no official schedule. You think there is? I think the pressure comes from like three different directions at once, which is why it feels so heavy. First, there's family, and I'm not saying your family is bad or wrong for this, but there's this thing that happens, especially if your parents had a clear path. They went to school, they get a job, they build something, where they genuinely cannot understand why you don't just do that too. And it's not malicious, they are not trying to stress you out, they just see a clear road and they can't figure out why you are not walking on it. And then there's your friends or the people who went to school with. And social media has made this so much worse, because now you don't just run into people occasionally and hear what they are up to. You get a daily feed of everyone's highlight reel stacked on top of each other. Everyone posts about a promotion, someone posts about moving into their own space, someone posts about a trip they went on, and you are sitting there in your room at 11 p.m. watching all of this and doing the maths in your head, and the maths never works out in your favor, because you are comparing your life with all the boring bits and uncertainty and the bad days to everyone else curated best moments. That's not fair comparison. That's not even a real comparison. But let's try telling a brain that at 11 p.m. And then there's the third direction, which is honestly the weird one, yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you internalize the timeline so deeply that you are now pressurizing yourself. You don't even need someone else to say it, you just feel it. That low level background noise of, am I doing enough? Am I moving fast enough? Is everyone else further along than me? All three of these things hitting you at the same time. That's why it feels like so much. Let me tell you about a specific moment that kind of crystallized all of this for me. I was at this family thing, and you know how family gatherings go. At some point, the conversation turns to you, and it's never aggressive, it always dressed up as caring. How are you doing? What are you working on? What's the plan? And I remember sitting there and just going through the motions of answering. And my cousin, who I genuinely like, this isn't about him. He's talking about these things he's doing, this project he's building, and everyone at the table is nodding and asking questions and clearly impressed. And then there's this moment where everyone sort of looks at me like, okay, now's your turn. And I did not have a thing. I had a bunch of half-formed ideas and some stuff I was figuring out and a general sense of what direction I wanted to go in, but nothing clean enough to set a dining table. So I said something vague, something that sounded like a plan but was not really, and everyone nodded and moved on. And I spent the rest of that night feeling like I'd failed some kind of test I did not even know I was taking. And the worst part is, I went home and I started comparing, like genuinely sitting there going through in my head everyone I knew and what they were doing and trying to figure out where I ranked, which is one of the most useless things a person can do. There's no ranking, life is not a competition with a leaderboard. But at that moment, it felt exactly like one, and I felt like I was losing. I think about that night a lot actually, not because it was dramatic, it was not. It was just a normal family dinner, but it was the moment I realized how much of my anxiety about the future was coming from others people's perception of me. Not from what I actually wanted, not from what actually made sense for my life, just from what looked great, what would get the nod at the dining table. Just what I have slowly started to understand, and I want to be clear, I am still walking through this. This isn't a video where I have it all figured out. I am handing you the solution. That's not what this channel is. But I've started to notice that the pressure to have your life figured out isn't actually coming from life. Life does not care. Life has no opinion of its timeline. The sun comes up whether you have a 5-year plan or not. The pressure is coming from people, specific people. And most of those people, if you actually stopped and thought about it, are just as uncertain as you are. They're just quieter about it or better at performing confidence. Or they've found one thing that given them a sense of direction, even if it's not actually what they want either. People who seem the most put together are often just better at hiding the uncertainties, not at actually not having it. And I think once you really absorb that, not just hear it but actually feel it, something starts to shift a little, because you stop trying to put certainty, you stop trying to give the answer at the dining table, and you start actually sitting with what you actually want, which is slower and messier and less impressive to talk about, but it's real. I also think there's something worth saying about time. Everyone my age feels like they're running out of it, like there's the deadline approaching and you have not done enough yet. But when you actually look at the people you admire, the ones who built something real, who figured out what they wanted, most of them did not do it in their early 20s. Most of them spent their early 20s being confused and trying things and failing at things and slowly working it out. The early 20s are not supposed to where you have figured it out, they're just a story someone told you and you believed it. I started this channel because I wanted a place to talk about this stuff honestly, not in a motivation way, not in a self-help way, just in a hey, I'm going through this too, and maybe it helps to say it out loud kind of way. If any part of this video felt like something you have thought about but never said, that's kind of exactly the person I'm making this for. The pressure to figure it out is real, the feeling of being behind is real, the dining table conversations are real. I'm going to tell you not stop feeling those things, but that's not how it works. But I do think there's something what matters about just naming it, saying yeah, this is what it actually feels like, not the polished version, that actual version. That's what it's going to be every video. If you're new here, stick around. If you have been here, you already know what this is. Either way, I will see you in the next one.